All right, welcome to Breakthrough Year, Week 6. Stick with this journey of the 12-month process of transforming your life. Today's video is the slow learner syndrome, how you learning too slow will ruin your life. Because if you're a part of this program, there's one critical assumption that I'm going to make in today's lesson. You've come to the realization that there are extremely important success principles that you've got to have and learn today in order to be the person that you want to be as you live out the rest of your life. And you've come to the realization that you've never been taught this before. You've come to the realization that your parents didn't teach you this. Maybe they didn't know what it took in order to become successful and reach a certain level of financial independence. They weren't aware of what it took in order to stand out from, just a typical average person working at a regular 9-to-5 job. They might have had well-intended thoughts and messages for you, but you became an adult and you started to realize that there was more to be desired out of what you got growing up. Then you went to school. And when you went to school, you recognized that the things that you were taught in school weren't actually going to take you to a place of dominance, preeminence, success in your adult life, right? You learned a lot of things that might have been good for the moment, or a lot of things that might have helped you pass the test. But in terms of actually being world class in a professional environment, you came to the realization that many of those things that you never learned. And so that's a big part of the reason why you joined this program. And so one of the most important lessons that I can give you as part of this 52-week journey is giving you the understanding that right now, wherever you're at in your life, and I don't care how much you feel like you're doing, you're learning too slow. And that is going to create hell in your life. And to some extent, it has already done so already. I'm sure there's been something, whether it was some revelation or some, missing link that you came across one time in your life and you look back and you said, man, I wish I would have known that when I was this age. And when you feel that way, you got to think about, well, okay, what's prompting me to feel like if I would have known this particular lesson a little bit earlier in life, why was it important that you should have known that earlier? Well, probably the reason why you felt like you should have known that earlier is because you encountered some setback or some obstacle or some real pain point along the way. In not knowing that if you would have known that and you would have applied that, if it would have changed your behavior, certain things in your life could have turned out totally different, right? You could have been on a much more forward path on the road to success. So in today's video, I really want to go through this process, how to be able to unlock and unwire this prison that we're in of the slow learner syndrome. So I want to take a moment and talk about business principles. A lot of people are familiar with the world of marketing. And one of the things that you constantly notice in the field of marketing is that, you look at a lot of big corporations and a lot of big brands, they'll take the same commercial and they will promote that commercial or promote that advertisement multiple times within a day. You see billboards, you see all these bulletins, you see all these different communications just vying for your attention. And sometimes it makes you wonder, well, why are there so many repetitive statements being put out in the world to grab my attention with the exact same message? Well, there's something that many expert marketers know that maybe you don't know. And that is the average person in society doesn't actually catch on to any one message until the message has been transmitted to them 9 times. Okay? That's very important. The average person in society does not catch on to the core essence of a message being delivered in any form until it has been told to them 9 different times. And so marketers understand that most people who have been falsely programmed into learning slow, not learning fast, not seeing the value in being a very attentive learner in the moment and applying in the moment, what they really understand is that we, to no fault of our own, have been trained through life to be stuck on stupid. Now, I know that that might sound like a harsh statement, but have you ever, had a parent tell that to you? I know that's one of the statements that I know that growing up for me, my mom would make, boy, you'd stay stuck on stupid. And one of the things that would often be said was, a hard head makes for a soft behind. And we were told many of these messages as a youth growing up, but we never really take the time to meditate on how this actually affects us later on in life when in fact the stakes are higher than when we were as kids. What is the cost of being stuck on stupid as an adult? What's the cost of having habits, having known points of ignorance in our life where we want to accomplish goals, but we don't know how to do it? Whether we don't know how to start a business, we don't know how to grow it, we don't know how to get the job that we want to have, we don't know how to make the money. When we have these areas of just, things that we do not know due to sheer inexperience, what's the cost of that in our life, right? And so one of the things that I need you to understand is that when it comes to you achieving success, achieving a dream that you set out to accomplish, in most cases, the road is long. Okay, so let's say, for example, you want to be somebody that is, a recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize. That's a very long road. Let's say that you're somebody that wants to be able to have a successful business. It's not going to happen overnight. Let's say that you want to be in the Olympics. You want to be able to leave a lifelong legacy. You want to create a scholarship fund. Whatever the case may be, if you're thinking big enough and you're dreaming big enough, then chances are the road to success for your personal journey in life is going to be one that is long. But the downside is life in and of itself is short. So a big question that comes for all of us that are conscious of this in our lives is that when it comes to whatever dream that you have in your life, whatever you feel like your destiny will be, will you live long enough to be able to see that dream become a reality? Will you actually have enough time on earth to make it through your course? And thinking about the shortness and the mortality of life, one of the main things that you want to think about is this is all of the reason why you really need to be able to actually cut the learning curve in order to reach success. Because everybody that has accomplished world-class success all came to one realization. In order for you to be successful in any particular arena or industry at a world-class level, you've got to be able to learn everything fast, because the amount of time that it would take you to comfortably learn lessons and apply the knowledge that you're getting and gain the experience that's needed to take you to the next level, to learn all of that at a comfortable pace, chances are you don't have a lifespan that's long enough to move through life comfortably, to get those benefits and actually enjoy it. Right? So one of the famous quotes that's in society is, art is long and life is short. So if you want to be somebody that actually accomplishes, great things within your lifetime, how are you working today to make sure that that happens? Even when you look at people that lived world-renowned lives, many of them, unfortunately, was not able to see really the fruits of their labor while they were living. Like if you were to look at somebody like Steve Jobs, right? He started Apple and founded Apple, and then he spent a large portion of time being ousted out of his own company. But imagine the fact that when he died and passed away in his mid-50s, Apple hadn't even become the gigantic corporation that it is today. He had not even lived to see that iPhone really take like full light in his own organization. He had just been on the cuff and the brink of just getting to the iPod. And so what you really, really, really want to think about is whatever your legacy is in your life, are you working and learning fast enough to actually see that happen and manifest in your lifetime? And this is the reason why you can't learn slow, right? Because there's no guarantee that you're actually going to get to the finish line moving at your current pace. There's something that I want you to think about, right? We talked about the average person only catching a message until that one message has been told to them 9 times over, right? Wouldn't it be so much more beneficial for you and your legacy if for every one time a message came to you, you were able to take it and run with it and learn and grasp and apply? But that's just not generally human nature. Typically, we don't sponge in things and actually do something about it in the moment. We have to go through pains. We have to go through discomforts. We have to be proven wrong and shown that our way is not the right way, which brings more credibility to the way that we should have learned the very first time around. Okay? And so what I want you to think about is the pace of learning for the average person, right? We've all been kind of somewhat groomed to have an average pace of living. So for example, when it comes to the average person in the world today, the average person, if they read at all, post-school, post-college, post-high school, the average person will read 4 books per year, right? Now notice that. I said for the average person that's actually gotten out of school and is reading. Most people that have graduated from school don't read 1 book. They don't learn one thing that could help them actually grow in their career. They don't read one thing that could actually help them improve their finances. Don't read one thing that can improve their health. And then, you start to see the fruits that come from that, being in a generation that's more obese than ever, being in a generation that's check to check, right? Being in a generation where divorce rate is higher than ever, and all of these different ills are coming largely on the back of ignorance, largely on the back of not knowing any better about how to be able to maneuver our way out of this situation. So if the average person in society is only reading 4 books every year, you should at least be double that if you want to be successful, right? Because if you're only reading at an average pace, there's no way that you're ever going to be above average. If you're only reading at an ordinary pace of learning, that means that you're only going to produce ordinary results. The average CEO in America right now reads 52 books a year. And those are the trends that you want to look at, right? Especially if you're an aspiring business owner. You want to be able to say, well, you know what? If the average person reads only 4 times a year, but you see these CEOs of, Fortune 500 companies that are on the rise, that are not on the Fortune 500, but are really staking a place in society for the years to come. You got to ask yourself, well, why is it that they're not satisfied and they're not comfortable with reading 4 books in a year like everybody else? And the real reason is because they've recognized that in order to achieve their legacy, the only way that it's going to happen in a competitive professional environment where people are competing globally, and you got 7.4 billion on the people on the planet, is you've got to be able to outlearn everybody else. You've got to be able to outpace everybody else, because there's a lot of people in the world today that have your idea, right? You're not the only person that wants to be successful. You're not the only person that cares about investing in real estate. You're not the only person that cares about starting a business. You're not the only person that wants to be able to make money to do better for their family. So what's going to separate you from the rest of them? Well, one of the main components is your aptitude and your ability to learn faster than everybody else. In fact, there was this interview where Warren Buffett and Bill Gates sat on a panel, and they asked Bill and Warren, if you had any superpower in the world to be able to revolutionize your life, what would it be and why? They chose, both unanimously, I would be a faster reader. What are these rich guys telling you? They're telling you that the success is in the learning, right? That readers are leaders. And it's not just books, right? We talk about programs, coaching, seminars, mentors, all of these different types of tools to help you accelerate your knowledge and your understanding, because the true fact of the matter is you don't know everything that you need to know in order for you to be successful at the way that you want to be successful, right? That's really a sheer fact. It's kind of like how they say, in the New Testament scripture, if any man thinks that he knows nothing yet as he ought to know, right? So if you ought to know how to be able to successfully grow a company, how to be able to successfully transition from one job to the next, chances are you don't know what you ought to know. And so you've got to focus on learning faster, because you might have just now been coming to the revelation that you need to transform your life, and you could be going on 40 years old right now. You could be 30 years old. You could be 50 years old, and you're putting yourself in a position where you only have but so much time to be able to figure this out while you have the energy to be able to do so, while you have the opportunity to be able to do so. One of the biggest ways that people feel strong misery in life is because of the fact that they missed a valuable opportunity in the moment when that opportunity was available to them. You want a surefire way of having a miserable life? Miss out on every opportunity and watch what happens. And that's exactly what is happening when you don't learn things in the appropriate time for you to be able to know it. If you're still moving at the average pace of learning, you're going to get the average results. Think about this as well. So we know that learning is highly correlated with success, right? Warren Buffett read hundreds and hundreds of pages every single day in the prime of his career. Even now, being elderly in age, right? 80-something years old, even now, he still reads a couple hundred pages of reading per day. Mark Cuban bought a private jet just to do some reading, 3 hours every single day, right? When you look at every successful person, every person that I've ever worked with whose net worth was $1 million or more, the one thing that they had in common? They were voracious learners. Every single last one of them. They were voracious learners. Every millionaire that I've ever met that succeeded in successfully running a business, all of them had a lust for learning. All of them were like, what's the next thing? What do I need to stay on top of? Because guess what? Information is always changing, being in the information age. So when you can dominate the skill of learning in the information age, he who has the most information wins. This is something very critical that you want to think about, okay? Every great system needs to be updated in order to remain great. So imagine being on a computer in 2018, right? And you're still running off of a Windows 98 operating system, right? Windows 98 in 1998 was a big deal. It was ahead of its time, right? It was transformational. It was a game changer. All of those great and wonderful adjectives that you can think of to describe something of power, Windows 98 was that in 1998. But Windows 98 in 2018 is a has-been. It's an embarrassment. It's nothing that anybody wants. And many of us, in terms of our learning, our knowledge and our skill set, even our mindset, our principles and our values are still shaped by what we were thinking about in 1998. Not learning anything new since then, right? So when it comes to your internal system, which is your human brain, which is responsible for all of the actions and the thoughts that you have moving forward in life, are you current on the latest and greatest? Are you thinking that you're going to compete with people that have a 2018 state-of-the-art system in their brain that they're running, but you feel like you still have, this world of success just entitled to you based upon whatever it is that you learn in the year 2000? Technology overall becomes obsolete within 5 years' time. So many of us are becoming obsolete in that exact same time frame because of the fact that we're still trying to catch up to learning the things that people were putting out 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. See, that's the reason why you have to be able to accelerate your learning. It's not enough that you should read the timeless books of history and all of these great autobiographies and how-tos that have been classics that have stood the test of time. It's not enough that you should just learn those. You've got to be able to get those down and still catch up to whatever is new today. That's the essence in many ways of being competitive in business, is being able to be on the cutting edge of what's happening right now, so that way you can constantly regrow and re-identify yourself to be able to survive. If you're not learning, you're dying. If you're not learning, you're not going to survive. You're not going to thrive. Every single successful business that's on the rise right now is highly invested in training their employees about the most cutting edge material. Any company that's still trying to do things the 2010 way, they're on the path to destruction, right? So think about that when it comes to your own personal life. Also, and this is going to be one of the final points that I want you to think about on why learning is important. If learning becomes a direct correlate to wealth, making money, right? The more that you learn, the more that you'll earn. Do you want to be the person that only achieves wealth right before you're on your way out of this earth? Do you want to be the person that's, okay, the most that you're promised on this earth is 70 years. You get to your point of wealth at 69, and you're not actually able to enjoy any of the wealth that you've amassed because you're dead at 70, right? This happens to so many people all the time. The average person in society will never achieve a wealthy life until they've reached an elderly age. So all of the benefits and all of the fruits that would come from even accumulating that wealth, in many cases, they're never around to be able to see it because they've already lived out their youth. The sad truth is, they're on their way out by the time that they've actually reached their peak. So do you want to be that person? Do you want to be the person that, okay, yeah, you finally got around to learning and growing and making the money that you want to make, but sucks for you, now you're gone, right? Or do you want to be the person that has cut the learning curve, got the things that you needed to know down now, and in getting those things down now, wow, you've got 10 years of being able to enjoy your wealth. You got 20 years, 30, maybe 40, right? You're able to actually bestow this wealth unto your children, and you're able to actually live them to see the utilization of wealth. You're able to actually live to see those in your communities being impacted, right? Tomorrow's not promised to any of us. You don't know your dying day. So that's the reason why you got to operate in the now. Learn what you need to learn now in the hopes that you'll have what you need before it's too late. Okay? Before we close this off, I want to give the assignment, and I want to talk about the top 3 attributes that you need to be able to have in order to be a faster learner. And then I'm also going to give you one tactic. Okay? So here's what you need to think about. Number 1, you need to first have a spirit of self-awareness in order to open up your ability to be able to learn faster, right? So you can't be stuck in American Idol syndrome, thinking that you're good at something that you're not. And then you're spending all of these years trying to perfect something that you will only be mediocre at best, if you think that that's going to be your key to success. You've got to be able to figure yourself out now, so that way you can find out, okay, what are my strengths? What am I naturally talented and gifted at, that if I actually hone my time on this craft, I could find myself being within the top 5% of people in the world in this industry. If you are not on that route and that path, I can guarantee you, you're never going to be able to make any real substantial money. You might be able to have a job here and there, and you might be able to make decent pay, but people only will pay top dollar for world class. You've got to be able to position yourself to that point. And you can't do that based upon a weakness. Because if you try to build on a weakness, in many cases, you will only get to mediocre at best. It's better for you to build on your strengths, because as you build on your strengths, that's what's going to give you the most competitive edge to be able to excel everybody else. Right? Remember, in this competitive global arena, it's not enough that you should just satisfy yourself. You've got to be able to tower over everybody else that's in your industry. Okay? So in order to be able to do that, you've got to have the awareness of your strengths and your weaknesses. You've got to be able to build a career that's focused around your top strengths that minimizes your weaknesses. Okay, that's how you're going to be able to grow and learn faster, because in you doubling down on that strength, that's going to push you closer towards a passion. Is going to put you closer towards things that actually challenge you and stimulate you in a way that you want. You've got to be able to have that awareness. Secondly, you've got to be able to have the ability to adapt to situations very quickly. If you're not adapting, once again, you're dying. Right? Even if, and I'm going to use this from a scientific standpoint, but really scientists and spiritual leaders can both agree on this point. If you are not placing yourself in a position to adapt to the environment that's in front of you, you're not going to stick around. We've seen this in top businesses that have failed. We see this in personal problems as they arise in our life. Life is always changing. Situations are always changing. So the thing that you learn today may not be around tomorrow. And guess what? When tomorrow comes around, you're going to have to continue to learn. You have to position yourself to become a learning machine if you want to be successful. So if you're not willing to adapt, right? And this kind of goes into other attributes of stubbornness, kind of being unwilling to change your own personal ways, you're not going to be able to get where you need to get. Even in the ancient scripture, what did Jesus Christ say? He said, if you are not willing to take on the mindset of a little child, you would not inherit the kingdom. And why is that? Because a young child is very moldable, very willing to adapt and learn. Right? A young child is going to be able to ask questions. And when do you learn a language? As a young child. When do you learn very formative skills? As a child. Right? So if you don't place yourself in a position where you're able to still be willing to learn at a very aggressive pace, like would a child, you're not going to inherit the success that could be intended for you if all you did was be willing to actually adapt to situations, right? If you grew up in the ghetto, if you grew up in the hood, if you grew up, without a silver spoon in your mouth, if you grew up middle class, there are very specific characteristics, habits, mindsets, actions that you're going to need to change in your life today, right now, if you even remotely have the desire to want to be successful. And if you do not adapt, you're going to find yourself pretty extinct, right? That was even one of the things that Charles Darwin said as he had studied his own concepts of evolution. He said that those species that are going to survive are going to be those that are able to adapt to the current environment. So again, if you're still stuck on stupid, if you're still stuck on 2000, if you're still stuck on the old idea that still isn't working, then guess what? You're making your own life extinct. That's the reason why you gotta place yourself better to be able to adapt, which is a key to learning. Last but not least, if you're going to be a faster learner, you actually have to be the person that has a student's type of mentality, right? So a key to this is the spirit of humility. I want to really get you in the mindset of looking at successful people and understanding that if somebody is ahead of you in any facet of life, the wisest thing for you to be able to do is to be able to pretend that you know nothing and follow after the advice as quickly as possible if you want to be successful, right? So if you're a person that is super stubborn, you're a know-it-all, you are not willing to be able to leave your own thoughts at the door to be able to learn and actually apply something different and reprogram your own mind, you're never going to be a fast learner, because you're always going to hold on to your own thoughts, whatever you think is great, and it's going to keep you at whatever ceiling that it's keeping you at, right? So, you've got to be able to have these types of shifts as a person. When I'm working a lot of times with clients and I'm consulting and I'm coaching and I'm doing this and I'm doing that, you'll notice that even as I'm coaching and consulting, I'm always continually learning. I'm always trying to not only stay where I'm at and figure that I got it from there, I'm trying to take it to the next level so that way I can continue to pour more into myself in order to pour more into others. When I'm in a room and there's somebody that's in the room that's made more money than me, there's somebody in the room that has achieved something with experience far beyond the level that I'm at today, I don't talk about what I know at all. In fact, when I'm in those type of rooms, I take on the posture of the most ignorant person in the world. And I don't mean obnoxious when I'm saying the word ignorant. I'm saying I take on the posture of someone that doesn't know anything. Because clearly what I know, or what I think that I know, is not sufficient to reaping the results that somebody ahead of me has gotten. So when I'm in front of that particular person, I posture myself as someone that doesn't know anything so that I can have my cup filled, okay, with all of their knowledge and their wisdom and their understanding and their learning in order for me to grow, right? This really famous proverb. It was the story of this elderly individual that served as a mentor to a very young apprentice. And the mentor constantly tried to pour into the apprentice and show the apprentice, the steps and all of the things that was needed for that young apprentice to be successful, to be accomplished in life, to really be able to change the game and really get to a place that he had never been to before. And so the young student acted as though he had wanted to learn, but he was never actually listening when his older mentor had spoken to him. So the mentor tried to tell him one thing, and instead of actually receiving what was being told to him, the young apprentice just responded back with whatever he knew in opposition to what the mentor had said. And so the mentor tried to share with him something else, and yet again, it became another situation, second situation, a third situation, where here the young apprentice was responding back with what he knew rather than digesting everything that was coming from someone that was more experienced than him. So what the elderly mentor did in that situation was he took a cup and he had this cup. He put it in front of the mentee, the young apprentice. And in front of this young mentee, he poured water into the cup, pouring water. It's filling up the cup. It's filling up the cup. It's filling up the cup. The apprentice is wondering, well, why is this guy filling up this cup right in front of me? Is he trying to pour me a drink? He keeps filling up the cup until the point where the cup starts overflowing with water. And the old man keeps pouring into the cup and pouring into the cup and pouring into the cup. So at this point, the young mentee, the apprentice, thinks that the older man has gone senile. Surely, in his elderly age, he's figuring that the old man doesn't realize that the cup is actually overflowing, and somehow he's mentally checked out. So he keeps pouring and keeps pouring and keeps pouring up until the point where the young apprentice actually stops the mentor and informs him, the cup is overflown. Why are you keep pouring this water into this cup? And so then once the mentee says that to the mentor smiles at him and he responds. He says, I'm glad that you've made this observation that this cup has overflown and nothing else can go into it. Because in the exact same way that I've been pouring into this cup, and I have clearly damaged this desk in me pouring into something, and it's gone far beyond its capacity. This is a metaphor for your brain. This is a metaphor of you. I've continued to try to pour myself into you, but because of the fact that you're so filled with your own thoughts, your own ideas, and your own perceptions, there's no more room for knowledge to grow. There's no space for me to be able to endow you with any more wisdom, right? It's all taken up. So that's one of the things that you always want to be mindful of when it comes to you speeding up the pace of your learning, right? The average person will struggle with this because when they hear an idea or a concept or a principle that's foreign to them, immediately they will get on the defensive. Immediately they will discredit or discount the information that's being presented because it doesn't coincide with what they already know, right? So immediately somebody tells them something, oh no, that's not that, it's this. Instead, what you want to be able to do as a faster learner is you want to say, well, wait a second. This is a person that's made more money than me. They've gotten a little bit farther ahead of me in my career. Maybe it's in my marriage. Maybe it's in my kids. Maybe it's whatever you're desiring to build your dream around. When you find that mentor and that mentor pops on that idea to you, right? Instead of discounting it, what you want to say is, this is a person that's actually accomplished something that I find respectable. Why do you have that thought process that you have? Because when you take a moment to actually become curious about how they arrived to that conclusion, that's when you're placing yourself in a position to learn and accelerate and grow. When you shut the door on learning and you are like, oh yeah, no, that's not it, it's this. What do you learn from that? You're putting yourself in a room and you're leaving the room with the exact same knowledge that you knew before you even stepped foot in the door. So what was the point of stepping in the door in the first place? Right? You've got to be able to up your humility factor in order to become a faster learner. And in fact, if you read any autobiographies on Michael Jordan, right? There's been books that's been written by Roland Lazenby. There's been a lot of different coaches that have trained with Michael Jordan. And one of the things that one of Michael Jordan's first major coaches said about him, Dean Smith, University of North Carolina basketball coach, he said, Michael Jordan was the most coachable player that I had ever worked with. There wasn't another player that I had ever trained that listened more closely to my instructions and followed it than Michael Jordan. And For a lot of us, with the mentors that we have in the learnings that we undertake, your success is pretty much going to be the byproduct of that skill, right? You doing things on your own, you've already seen the fruits of that, right? Whether it be for good or worse. Your ability to grow from this point all comes down to how well you can adopt new learning and then follow it to the T. Okay? So for your assignment, I want you to think about an area in your life where you're learning too slow and you're going to actually accelerate your pace of learning in order to be successful. So maybe you're a person that only reads 4 books in a year, or maybe you're not even reading that 4, right? So if the average person is reading at 4 and you're reading at 4 or less, but you expect to be more successful than the average person because average people are living paycheck to paycheck, how many books are you going to read this year? Make that commitment right now. Write it down. Send it to me. Email me it. How many books are you going to read this year? If you're only taking one course every 2-3 years, right? But you got successful people that are learning at least on average once a semester, right? How many courses are you going to take in a year to actually expand your learning? Commit to it. What area are you learning too slow? What area are you just kind of coasting by and it's actually putting you on a path to a miserable life? If you want to be successful, you've got to imagine yourself being on a road trip from here all the way on the west coast of the United States to the east coast of the United States, from point to point across the states. Are you going to get there on time if you're driving at 5 miles an hour? This 5 miles an hour could be your current pace of learning, how many books you're reading right now, how much information that you're actually learning and then applying, right? Do you want to get from one side of the globe to another at 5 miles an hour? Or do you want to find yourself riding in the fast lane? Okay, I need you to think about that. And finally, last hack, you need to set aggressive timetables for yourself. When you're working in your personal schedule, as you're trying to move your life forward, set aggressive timetables and deadlines for yourself in order to get ahead. You need to create deadlines that have little to no slack in them at all. So that way it forces you in a position to focus 100% when you are at work. So say, for example, if I'm writing another book and, maybe it might take me an hour to write 10 pages and my goal for the day is writing 10 pages. Maybe what I would do is I would set a goal for myself within that work session to be done in 45 minutes. Because I know if I'm going to get done with those 10 pages effectively written in 45 minutes, that means I can't be on the phone. That means my mind can't drift. That means I can't be text messaging, emailing, social media, etc. I got to block out all distractions and I got to focus in this short timetable. At a day-to-day level, at a monthly level, at a quarterly level, and at an annual level, you need to be setting very aggressive timetables so that way it cuts procrastination. Okay? The truth of the matter is, if you want to be successful, you've got to start learning faster. Okay? That's going to be one of the primary keys to success. So I hope you guys got a lot out of this lesson, and I'll see you on week 7. Take care.